Hello and welcome. My name is Chris. I'm an American living out my midlife crisis in the Netherlands. In this video, I'm going to share 7 steps of how you can utilize the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty to move yourself to the Netherlands just like I did. In February 2024, I saw a monumental shift happening in the United States, and I desperately wanted to get myself and my family out of the US and into a safe place. Frankly, I was tired of always having to look around, see if somebody has a gun, have concerns about my kids and their safety, both in school as well as for them being queer. There just were so many things that were happening around us in the state of Oregon, and I know throughout the entire United States, that we had to find a way out. And after a brief but exhaustive search, we found the Dutch American Friendship Treaty, or DAFT. Now, with DAFT, you can move to the Netherlands from the United States with a business idea. And unlike other visas from other countries, you don't need a company to sponsor you. You don't need a partner or a spouse to get this visa. You also don't need to have an existing business, like a digital nomad visa, which is very popular for some folks to get out of the United States right now. You do need a good idea for a business, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, personally, I knew that I was not going to qualify for like a highly skilled migrant visa or find a job that was going to sponsor me, let alone also bring my family with me. And, the reason I knew that is because I'd spent 17 years in the hospitality industry. And it's not known as an industry where you can just move to another country and expect to land a job. And I have worked with several people that have moved around for a few months at a time, like 5 or 6 months, to different countries that do wine harvests and things like that. But that was not something I was looking for. I was looking for a long-term viable visa that we could stay in a country for a long time and be safe from what was happening in the United States. And from the moment my wife told me what the DAFT visa was, I absolutely knew it was the right thing for us and we were going to be able to make it work. Now, the visa itself is quite simple and it's almost too easy to where I looked at these steps and went, is that really all there is to it? And I know that I'm not alone because I see posts like this all the time in different Facebook groups I'm in and Reddit and things like that. And it really is that simple. To me, the hard part is making sure that you have a sustainable business that can actually make you money once you land. Again, I think there are ways to make that work, and you can see my first video and how I talk about what I'm doing with my current business. In 1956, the United States and the Netherlands set up a treaty that allowed entrepreneurs to start businesses in the respective countries. This allowed for residence as long as those businesses were running. And they set it up with 2 different types of businesses to begin with. The first was a trade business between the 2 countries. So, for instance, a Dutch person could go to the United States and start a business that involved trading goods or services between the 2 countries. And vice versa for the United States, if somebody wanted to go to the Netherlands and start a trade specific business, they could do that under this particular visa. The second way that this treaty comes into play is, in my opinion, a little bit more blurry, and how most people end up utilizing this particular visa. It states that an individual can establish a business with the purpose of directing and developing that enterprise, so long as a substantial amount of capital was invested. Now, that's pretty blurry, in my opinion, and you try and figure out what that actually means. It basically means that you can create a business so long as you meet whatever that minimum is, which in this case, to move to the Netherlands, is a 4,500 euro deposit that must stay in a bank account under the company name. And that is your investment, your substantial investment into the company. Now, the funny part is that in 1956, this was established under guilders, which was the currency at the time in the Netherlands, and it stated that about 10,000 guilders needed to be invested into this company. And nowhere along the way since 1956 has the Dutch government updated the amount of capital needed in order to start this business. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not about to tell them that they need to up the ante and make sure that people are investing significantly more money in order to make this happen. Now, we know how things are going right now in the United States, where Trump is imposing 10, 20, 30, even 200% tariffs in some cases on goods that are entering the United States. So, my guess is that nobody is using the first way that you can obtain this visa by starting a trade company currently with what's going on between the United States and many other countries. Now, the first step to obtain this visa is quite simple. You must be a US citizen. Now, the way I'm going to talk about this is specifically for people wanting to move to the Netherlands. Of course, there's the vice versa of this, where somebody in the Netherlands could move to America right now, but my guess is that most people are probably not wanting to do that, and that's not why you are watching this video. So you must be a United States citizen. You must also have a valid passport. And I bring that up because obviously you need to have a passport to travel internationally, but only about a third of Americans have passports right now that are valid. And there's legislation right now going through the United States Congress about how you would need a passport in order to vote in future elections. I believe it's already passed the House and it's on its way to the Senate, but this is a big deal. And if you're still in the United States, I highly recommend that you go and get a passport if you can afford it. And I say that because it's a few $100s to get a passport by the time you have to go through all the photos and the paperwork and the fees that you have to pay. But I highly recommend it, and it's probably a good idea in case you need to leave the country quick anyway. Now, the next step, which is probably less of a step and more of a fact, is that you can't have a criminal record. And I think what they really mean here is that you can't have felonies on your criminal record. I don't think they care if you were speeding down I-5 in California and got several tickets. I think they care about significant crime. And that makes a lot of sense to me because the Netherlands is a very safe place. Sure, you have 18 million people in a small space. Some things are going to happen. There was a stabbing recently, for instance, in Amsterdam, and 5 people were injured. Nobody died, but it was still a big deal. And these types of things happen all the time, but the violence is not like it is in the United States. And we certainly don't have the gun violence. Now, step number 3 is you must start a business. And there's really 2 different ways that you can go about this. You can actually start this process in the United States if you have an existing business that you are wanting to transfer over to the Netherlands. And this would be something that would be making you somewhere between 70 and 100,000 euros a year or more. And that is something you would definitely want to talk to a lawyer about and try and get this set up before you move. Because there are tax benefits to having your company set up prior to entering the Netherlands. And that type of company is called a BV, or basically it's a corporation. And you would typically hire yourself as an employee, and that's where your tax benefits come from with that one. That's not my focus because that's not the route that I took. And also, I was starting a brand new business and knew I was not going to make the kind of money that was necessary for those tax benefits. So the other type of business is called a ZZP, or basically freelance business. And this is something you can also set up if you have an existing business in the United States. But I would recommend it if it's something that you think you're going to make less than 70,000 euros a year. Now, either way, you need to register your business with the KVK, which is basically the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. And you set an appointment at one of the 16 offices that are throughout the country. And you tell them what your business is and you give them some personal information, and they literally set it up right there on the spot during that appointment. It costs about 80 euros, and you will walk out of the appointment with a piece of paper that says this is your company name and you have established a business in the Netherlands. Now, one thing I want to say about establishing your business with the Chamber of Commerce is try and do a little bit of research ahead of time with the KVK website. I'll link it in the description below. But if you have, say, a photography business, you want to make sure that you find the right code within the Chamber of Commerce to match up with your business. And I stress this because when I was telling people about my tour business during my appointment, I don't think they really understood exactly what it was. And I hadn't done a lot of research ahead of time about what code I should have. And so my business was actually under the wrong code for the first few months that I was in business. I've fixed it now, it's not a problem. And once you are in business, you can actually change and add codes on their website, which is really nice. Because, for instance, I added some consulting to my business late last year that I was doing for some companies in the United States. I went online, and before I got paid by those consulting companies, I added consulting to my list of things that the company does. So the things don't even have to do with what your company name is. They just want to know what kind of business you are performing in their country. And so step number 4 is a really important one. This is the investment into your business. This is the 4,500 euros that needs to be deposited into a Dutch bank account. And you have an accountant certified that the money is there in an account under your business name. But here's the problem. You actually can't open a Dutch bank account until your visa is approved and you have your residence card. So there's some challenges there, and I got a hold of my lawyer who was helping us with our immigration process, and they referred me to an accountant who helped me out with how do we navigate this one need, because I couldn't be the only one who was having this trouble of how do you deposit money into a Dutch bank account without actually being a resident yet. What my accountant told me to do was open up a German bank account with an online bank like N26 or Revolut or Bank or one of those. You can make your deposit in there because it's still an EU country, and I think for at least the beginning of the deposit being in there, they were totally okay with that. And so I did that and was able to open up with just my address in the Netherlands a German bank account, which I then used to deposit the 4,500 euros. And I highly recommend depositing maybe 5,000 euros or at least a few hundred above 4,500 euros in your account so that you can always maintain that 4,500 euro level. It's very important that throughout the time of the visa that you maintain a balance of 4,500 or more. There's a lot of information about the 4,500 euros and how it works in terms of your average daily balance of what you have in that account and your assets and your liabilities with your company. And I'm not going to get into that in this video. I will link my Substack post, which gets a little bit more into the weeds on that particular subject and kind of how to navigate that in the description below. Now, step number 5 is documents. You must bring some documents with you to the Netherlands, and they must be apostilled. And I had no idea what apostilled meant when we started this whole process, but basically what you need is you need to take an original document like a birth certificate, marriage certificate, divorce certificate, I think was a thing that was on the list. I don't know, I haven't had one of those, but it's definitely something that you want to look at if that pertains to you. And you need to send those certificates to the state government that issued them, and they will basically put a sheet of paper on them with a stamp that says this is an official document and we certify it as such. Now, I thought that was kind of weird because isn't it clear that you have an official document when you have a birth certificate or a marriage certificate? But I guess it wasn't. And so this is an extremely important step because they will look at these documents, they will make copies of them, and you will get them back. But it is all part of the immigration process and part of the steps that you need in order to get this visa. So make sure that you have plenty of time to get those things done. For us, we only had 44 days from the time we decided to do this until the time we got on the plane. And it was enough time, but there were a couple of weeks that I was kind of concerned that we weren't going to make things work. Step number 6 is proof of income, which seems very strange, right? You are establishing a brand new business in a new country. How are you going to have proof of income? Well, for those that have an existing business, I guess that this is something that they could show. But for people like myself who were starting new businesses, I had zero income to show. And what I really learned later is that yes, this is included in the initial steps of how to obtain this visa, but it's more about the 2-year renewal. So after 2 years, you have to go through a renewal process and show that you have done something with this business. In theory, you're supposed to show that you can maintain yourself in the country. And a lot of people come with lots of money, and so they have this business that maybe isn't actually showing that much revenue to date, and that can be a challenge when it comes to renewal time. But the rules are very clear about what kind of income you need to make, and that is about 1,500 euros if you are just an individual, and about 2,200 euros if you are a family. Now, I think we all know that there's absolutely no way anybody is living on that kind of money, and that your business would actually have to make significantly more than that. But if you're living off of savings, for instance, while you're building your business, this is kind of what they're supposed to be looking for as the minimum amounts per month that you are supposed to be making in order to have a renewal approved. Now, I'm a member of a lot of different groups around the DAFT visa, and I've seen a lot of people say that even at renewal time, they're not looking at this at all. And I'm not taking that chance. Again, my whole point is the safety of my family. And that's why I'm here on the DAFT visa. I don't want to get to the end of 2 years and go, gosh, I didn't make enough money for the government to renew my visa. So I'm making strides to make this happen, and I suggest that anybody else on this particular visa does exactly the same thing. And it is possible, but probably not likely, that they get a little more specific and difficult about their renewals and kind of follow the letter a little bit more than maybe they have in the past. I don't think we're going to see that for a few years, but it is definitely a possibility. I think the last numbers I saw was about 400 or 500 people a year utilize the DAFT visa. My guess is we could see that double or maybe even triple this year in terms of people that are wanting to get out of the United States and use this particular visa as a way to make that happen. So as a result, that increased visibility could be a challenge for some renewals down the road. That said, even 1,500 people in a country of 18 million, it's a drop in the bucket. Nobody is paying attention really to what's happening with the DAFT visa. Now, the Dutch government has recently come out and said that they will not count the first 7 months of the 2 years, for the first 2 years before renewal, against your business. So basically, you can make zero revenue for the first 7 months. But by month 8, they fully expect you to be up and running and making 1,500 to 2,200 euros a month. And I think still for some people that might be a challenging goalpost to meet. But here's the thing that isn't mentioned in any of the DAFT visa information, in that you need to really think about what kind of business you want to create. And this is for people that are starting a new business. This is not for people that have an existing business and they're just going to move their clients over to the country. These are people that come here with no business and are starting a new one and basically have to gain clients from scratch. Like myself, I did not have a business before I got here. And I've had to be kind of scrappy, if you will, about how I'm obtaining some of that business, and have to really look for lots of different avenues to both network as well as market the business and make sure that I'm getting in front of as many people as I can. And so I think you really need to dig deep about what it is that you want to offer people of the Netherlands and think about what is really needed here. Hint, hint, it's a Mexican restaurant. Um, no, but for real, I think it's important to spend some time before you jump on a plane like I did and just jump into this new life. Like, what do you want to provide in terms of either services or goods to the people of the Netherlands? Is there somebody doing that already? How are you going to do it different? How are you going to do it better? Like, there's just so many factors when it comes to starting a new business that you have to dig pretty deep And then if you've built businesses in other countries like the United States, for instance, I'm here to tell you that the way that things are marketed here are completely different than what I dealt with when I was dealing with marketing businesses in the United States. None of the things that I would typically use in terms of my marketing efforts worked here, at least in the first 6 months of my business. And so I think you need to figure out how to be resourceful and come up with an idea that is really going to make an impact in the Dutch society. And so, two more things I'll mention. The first is I keep mentioning that my family is on the visa as well, and I'll share a little bit of information about that. In that I'm the visa holder of the DAFT visa, and my spouse and my kids are also on the visa as well. If you are a spouse on the DAFT visa, you have no work restrictions at all. You can go to work for any company anywhere in the Netherlands. You can work internationally. Whatever it is that you want to do to make money as the spouse of the DAFT visa holder, you can absolutely do that, and there's no restrictions. Kids are allowed to be on the visa as well, provided that you arrived before the kids turned 18. And that was our rush, was to make sure we were here by the time my oldest turned 18. And as long as they are dependent on you and living with you, so for instance, they haven't gotten married or they're not living in an apartment with, a job that they have that is supporting them, they can continue to be on your visa even at the renewal points further down the road, even if they are adults at that time. So it's really about the initial time that you applied for the visa, and that gets them residency into the country. And step number 7 is have some fun with it. Like, you are leaving the United States for a lot of reasons, and probably some of them are very stressful. And it's not a fun place to be right now. And especially if you're in a group like LGBTQ, or if you're a woman in the United States, or not a white man, basically, it's a pretty crappy time to be in the US. And so, that kind of daily life can definitely put an impact on how you're going to experience when you first get here. Think about how you want to change your life and the whole reason behind why you're doing this. And think about how you can incorporate that into your business, because I think it's important that we do have a little bit of fun along the way. And yes, this is a stressful thing, and yes, this is exhausting, but there are things that you can do to make it just a little bit more fun. And like my logo, for instance, I really had a good time putting this logo together. It incorporates some of the things of my tours, but it's also a throwback to the O'Connell crest, which is from Ireland, and something that is very important to me as an O'Connell. I also started a series on my O'Connell Tours YouTube channel called Van Videos, where literally I'm just driving down the road and I turn on my phone and I talk about whatever happens to be on my mind, or I share a place that I recently went to. And it's just something fun that's supposed to take your mind off of whatever is causing you stress at the moment. So I suppose I'll go ahead and wrap this up. I hope this video was helpful to you and showed you that the steps to the DAFT visa are actually quite simple, and they are totally attainable. And there's a lot of people in the United States that are looking to get out that don't have viable ways to make that happen. And I think this is one way that if you're looking to start a business, or you have a business and you can bring it over, it's a great way to start a new life and try something new. And most importantly, escape the crumbling United States right now. And let's be honest, it's really bad. I talked to our friends back there, and there are some big challenges right now, and I don't know how things are going to end, but I do know that if we were still there, we would be extremely unhappy. I'm not saying everything is, butterflies and rainbows here. It's not. Our daily life looks a lot like it did in Oregon, but I will tell you that our safety is my number one concern, and I have never felt more safe in my entire life. And the last thing I'll mention, if you haven't actually been to the Netherlands, it's a beautiful country. And yes, it's a flat country, but there are so many things to see. And every corner that I turn, I have a new experience. And I think that you could spend years just in this tiny country learning new things and exploring new things. And it's a fun culture to be a part of, including friendly people and delicious snacks. The Netherlands is definitely worth being on your list of countries to escape to. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends. You never know who might be looking to escape the United States. I'm Chris, and this is an American midlife crisis in the Netherlands. I look forward to sharing more soon. Take care.